Hammering out a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. This is the main hope for today's Trump-Putin meeting set to begin in Alaska in about an hour. And yet the absence of Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the meeting sparked concerns that terms agreed at any point could not be in Ukraine or Europe's favor. But is there any guarantee that any sort of consensus is going to be reached is up for debate. Bohdan Nahaylo, editor-in-chief of Kyiv Post, joins me ahead of the scheduled summit to discuss the latest. Mr. Nahaylo, great to see you in the studio, especially on such an important day.
Good evening and congratulations on Polish Army Day.
Thank you very much. So let's start from the top with everything that's been happening throughout the day. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, arrived in a USSR t-shirt. We've all seen that. A subtle hint of the delegation's, I would say, Soviet nostalgia, so to speak. Is this one of the signals that Russia is not taking this meeting entirely seriously, perhaps?
Yes, it is a signal because you may recall that recently when Witkoff was in Moscow, Putin gave him an award for Trump to give the son of a CIA agent who had gone over to the Russian side. It was totally disrespectful. But on the other hand, the Americans have done their little pinprick because, as you've seen, the journalists that arrived from Russia were given very Spartan conditions, not in a hotel, but in an improvised shelter in a stadium, and have been complaining about that. But I think, what is also telling, you've already said that Zelenskyy is not there. All right, he's not there, but perhaps he would have been kidnapped by the two of them, so better he stay away when the two Tarzans, self-styled Tarzans, meet. But I'm surprised to see tonight that Kellogg, who is supposed to be the representative of Trump for Ukraine, is also not there. So what is being discussed? On the other hand, we have seen that Trump has backtracked under pressure from Western leaders, including Polish leaders, jointly with the European ones, from saying that he will demand a swap of territories and he will try and get both sides to come to an agreement. Now he's saying this is a preliminary meeting. We're not expecting great results. I'm trying to take a sounding from Putin to see if he's amenable to pursuing peace negotiations, which is a different tone and a different set of expectations from a week ago.
Definitely. Russia's RIA news agency reported on Friday that Russian Special Envoy Kirill Dmitriev described the mood ahead of this meeting, which is supposed to take place in just a moment, as combative ahead of the meeting between Putin and Trump. Do you think this assessment is a reason to worry about the outcome of this meeting?
Well, I think that's for a Western audience. At home, if we've been following the Russian narratives for state-run media, it's very gung-ho. Finally, you see, we're out of isolation. This is very important. They're taking us seriously. Finally, again, Russia counts for something. So for them, they're selling it as very much a breakthrough after 2-3 years of isolation, and as a chance to set its own terms with a leader that's seen as erratic, inconsistent, and at the end of the day, amenable to Russian demands. And I think what they're really after is not just the international recognition again, but the lessening of sanctions, more time delays so that they can move forward on the ground and get an even better position for any potential compromise, that is a lasting ceasefire.
We've also heard about President Trump speaking to Alexander Lukashenko and apparently accepting an invite with his family to Minsk. Are you surprised that this call took place only hours before the meeting about the fate of Ukraine is supposed to take place?
I am indeed. I think we're all surprised, especially, we've just had the 5th anniversary of the repressive crackdown by the man who rigged the election, Belarus's dictator and the vassal of Moscow. So yes. On the other hand, if we're to be generous, we can perhaps interpret this as Trump playing games, trying to steer Lukashenko away. But he's not going to steer Lukashenko away from, the economic trough that Belarus feeds from, and also the Belarus's dictator's personal security, because it's really only Putin that's keeping him in power.
As we talk about this meeting, which is set to take place, and we were looking forward to it taking place, and this call that we just saw between Mr. Trump and Mr. Lukashenko, how accurate do you think is the statement that Mr. Trump is, in a way, bringing dictators back into the international, out of the international isolation and back into the fold?
Well, that's, I think, very politely and generously put by you. I think the reality is that Trump has wrecked international law. He's totally ignored the rules of the game and a rules-based system in international law, the UN Charter, for example, even, sort of the International Criminal Court, all of these things. He's presented it as if he alone will dictate to the world, who he can do business with, who is worthy of his attention, etc., and that only he can produce results. He's looking very stupid. He's painted himself into a corner, and unless he produces some results and is not made a fool of publicly by Putin, then he's in bad shape. But remember, he is trying to distract the world's attention away, and particularly the American attention away, from the Epstein case, from domestic difficulties, from having taken over the police system in Washington, which some compare to a coup d'etat, effectively. There's a lot happening. So for him, this is, if you want, a shield and a way of trying to, shall we say, rehabilitate his reputation.
And I have to stop you this very moment just for a second, because the pictures that we can see, the video we can see right on the screen is a live feed of Air Force One that landed in Alaska, and we're only moments away from seeing President Trump actually making history and stepping out of Air Force One to head to the meeting, which is set to take place. And according to official information, it's supposed to start at 9:30 p.m. CET, so we will see what happens next. But
is he being reminded that he's in America, Alaska, or is he in Russia?
This is a question that's not a question for me. I suppose some people will be looking for an answer to that question. We all hope he does. But as we speak about Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin in this meeting, which is set to take place, is there any place in those negotiations, in that conversation, which is set to take place, some say from 6 to 7 hours, and then having the aides join in for the meeting? Is there any point in that negotiation where we're going to see the two agree on certain conditions?
I think that there is a bottom line that they will agree on, that is to drag out time and to talk of another meeting, potentially with Zelenskyy and maybe a European representative potentially being represented. But Putin will want to buy time, and Putin, having taken, you note that most of his advisors, apart from Lavrov, are people in the economic sphere. What they're really after is a lessening of or suspension of sanctions. And if Putin can get that, if he can get Trump to say, okay, I'll not go forward with any harsher sanctions and ease what we have, but in the meantime think about, giving us something in return. I think that for both of them will be the best deal, and will leave everybody else unhappy. I mean, the attacks on Ukraine are continuing. Today, my phone is constantly ringing with error alerts. That's ongoing. But then the Ukrainians are also...
And there's cyber attacks across Europe as well. We only heard from Norway about the cyber attack, which led to a problem with the dam earlier in April.
It's what you said at the outset. The Russian attitude is, oh, great, we're in America, we're back on the show, on the stage. But at the same time, they're playing tough to say that we will do what we want in any case.
You mentioned a trilateral meeting, and you mentioned that President Trump was pointing in a direction of, this is just a preliminary meeting, we're going to see how things go with President Putin. Peskov confirmed that, as quoted by Russia's Interfax news agency, that a three-way meeting could take place following the Alaska summit on Ukraine, provided talks between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump produce results. What do you think is the future of trilateral meeting? And do you think that Vladimir Putin at any point in time is going to agree to such a meeting, or is it another smokescreen?
Look, I don't think the trilateral meeting is the best scenario, because again, it'll be 2 against 1. It'll be two one dictator and one tough guy that perhaps is not the most sophisticated diplomat on this planet, ganging up against Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy needs in that room at least the representative of the EU or one or two of the top leaders of Europe to back him up, because otherwise they will bully him. He will play tough, and then they will come out of the meeting and say, look, Zelenskyy is not playing ball with us. So it could be a kidnapping scenario. So let's not rush with the idea of a trilateral meeting as a panacea, as a formula. It could be a trap. The best thing is to have a more sort of, should I say, plenary meeting of the key players, and Europe has to be represented. There's no room for the UN. Even if the UN isn't doing anything, symbolically, there's the UN Charter.
There is a meaning to
perhaps
to
the
their
Secretary
presence.
General as a sort of neutral observer. It needs to be prepared in a much more sophisticated way than just two gangsters, if you were, up against a victim.
Thank you so much. Bohdan Nahaylo, editor-in-chief of Kyiv Post, was my guest. Great to have you back in the studio. Thank you. And so this would be all for now. I'm Klaudia Czerwinska, and you were watching World News Tonight. Please stay tuned with us here on TVP World, as we will be bringing you more on this summit taking place in Alaska.